welcome to Go a Little Mad, a horror movie podcast. My name's Jason, and I love scary movies.
I'm Briana, and I don't. This week, we are going to discuss Poltergeist.
Ooh, boy, I am so excited. Love this movie. Love it even more after watching it again.
I was pleasantly surprised with how much I liked it as well, actually. But before we get into all of that, let's talk about who wrote it, who directed it, who starred in it. It was directed by Tobe Hooper.
Allegedly, as we'll get into.
Yes, I've seen a little bit about that, but he is known as the master of horror, which is why I've never heard of him. Makes perfect sense.
Yeah, he's big in these circles. I'm a big fan of his work.
It was written by Michael Grays, Mark Victor, and little-known man Steven Spielberg.
I feel like you kind of buried the lead there. Like, Spielberg is right up top. Spielberg, this movie, again, I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit, but this movie was Spielberg's baby, and he was very involved in its creation.
That was the joke. That's why I said him last, you know?
Well, I mean, you know what they say. Jokes you have to explain are the funniest.
It stars JoBeth Williams as Diane Freeling, a.k.a. Mom. We have Craig T. Nelson as Steve Freeling, a.k.a. Coach.
I knew you were going to go the Coach route, but this is pre-Coach, and he looks fantastic.
He really does, yeah. Heather O'Rourke as Carol Ann Freeling. Oliver Robbins as Robbie Freeling. Beatrice Straight as Dr. Lesh. And then Zelda Rubinstein as Tangina.
Iconic role. Iconic. This is like the horror equivalent of Mariah Carey's All I Want for Christmas Is You, is Tangina in Poltergeist.
And she returned for the other two as well.
She sure did, yeah. A couple people did.
A synopsis for the film: it is a perfectly happy family living in a development where the father is a real estate agent for the ongoing builds. They begin experiencing unexplainable disturbances that start as innocent and playful, but soon grow terrifying and rageful.
Terrifying and rageful.
All right, so what are your experiences with Poltergeist originally?
This is another one. So this one came out before I was born, so I obviously did not have a chance to see it in the theater. This is another one of those VHS ones that I saw at some indeterminate part of my childhood. I've definitely watched it one more time a few years ago, maybe like 5, 6, and then this time. So I've seen it a total of 3 times. A big fan. Watching it now, a little older, really gave me even more appreciation for it, as we'll get into as we talk about the movie itself.
So for me, obviously I've never seen it before, but it is referenced heavily throughout pop culture. You know, I recognize the little girl immediately. I know that the TV is involved in this whole thing coming into it. I know the part where she says, "They're here." I've seen it referenced on Family Guy, that I Love the 80s show from VH1, probably a million more places.
The Simpsons definitely did it way back before it was cool.
Yeah, which I don't know The Simpsons. But, I mean, other than that, ultimately I didn't know anything that happens in the film, so.
Well, you were in for a little bit of a ride, huh?
Yeah, let's talk about the Rotten Tomato score and your flesh wounds.
Yeah, absolutely. So, our Rotten Tomato score is 86%, which is certified fresh, you know, what you kind of expect for this sort of legendary movie. If you listen before this episode, you know that we call them flesh wounds because they're like fun facts that don't go too deep. But these, they go a little deep. This next bit is probably the most uninterrupted talking I will ever do on this podcast. But I just have so many cool little facts, tidbit stories about this movie and its production and its legacy. I couldn't decide what to leave out. So we'll start with the elephant in the room. I think even a lot of non-horror fans know about the curse that allegedly hangs over the franchise as a whole.
Sure do.
Yeah, you've heard a little about that?
Yeah.
Okay. The urban legend, as it goes, is that the prop master in the first movie used real skeletons for the scenes towards the end when the caskets come bursting out of the ground, and that as a result of that, the movie and all of its sequels are cursed.
Okay, so wait. I did see this recently. I was writing up my notes and I was researching a couple different things and I came across that and I was going to talk about it if you didn't. But is that singular thing is the reason why they say it's cursed?
To my knowledge, yes, and it's also not even verified. Like,
right,
it's just an urban legend. You know, he used real skeletons. I don't know enough about the world of making movies in 1982 to
Well, apparently
comment.
It's because it was cheaper than making fake ones, which is crazy.
I mean, that makes sense. Skeletons just exist. You don't really have to pay for them. You just dig them up.
I feel like it should be pricey to get real skeletons, but...
You just literally go anywhere and dig, and you'll find a body eventually.
Yikes.
But okay, so why do people think this is cursed? Right off the top, I'll say I'm a little bit of a skeptic. When it comes to curse, I don't really think there's too much to it. There are a couple of little eerie things there, but for the most part, they talk about a lot of former and current cast members dying around production, before release, right around release time. But 2 of them were tragic and maybe spoke a little bit of a curse, but the rest were just kind of, I don't want to say run of the mill, but, they were older folks with health problems and they died. I don't necessarily think that that's cursed. But the list is such. We've got Dominique Dunn, who is a 22-year-old actress who portrayed big sister Dana Freeling in the first Poltergeist film that we watched. I don't think you mentioned her in the credits. She's not...
No, she's not really prominent in the film.
Yeah, she's not a big part of the movie. She spends most of the movie like at a friend's house and just being,
a teenager.
Kind of a teenager. Yeah, exactly. But she died November 4th, 1982, which was about 6 months after the film came out, earlier in 1982. She died at the hospital 4 days after going into a coma when she was assaulted and choked by her partner at the time.
Yeah.
That is definitely tragic. Really young, 6 months after the movie comes out, I definitely see why people start to think there's a bit of a curse. The next one, also kind of sad. Heather O'Rourke, who played Carol Ann, unexpectedly passed away at the age of 12 of septic shock. What had thought to be an ordinary flu launched into cardiac arrest during a drive to a hospital as bacterial toxins set loose by a bowel obstruction made their way into her bloodstream. Her heart was successfully restarted, and she was flown by helicopter to the much larger children's hospital, but she died on the table while they were operating to remove the obstruction.
That's so sad.
That is very sad. She was 12. She had been in Poltergeist 2 and Poltergeist 3 after this one. Yeah, there's really nothing much to say about that. It's just kind of jarring. One day she's a healthy 12-year-old girl. The next day she's, so I get why people think that might be cursed. The other 2, Julian Beck, the 60-year-old actor who played the evil spirit Kane in 1986 Poltergeist 2. He died of stomach cancer on September 14th, 1985. 60-year-old dying of stomach cancer. I know somebody that's 63 that died of stomach cancer, so that's not crazy, right? And then Will Sampson, 53-year-old actor who portrayed the good spirit Taylor in Poltergeist 2, I believe opposite Julian Beck. He died in a Houston hospital on June 3rd, 1987, about a year after the film came out. I don't have any details about how or why, unfortunately. Did you have anything in your research?
No, I haven't heard, beyond the 2 that star in the original, I haven't heard of any of these others.
Gotcha, yeah. And so those were the 4 that kind of died around that time period. A couple other people involved in it have passed since, because this was, 40 years ago at this point, and some of those folks were already old to begin with, including Zelda Rubinstein, may she rest in peace. But yeah, so that's the curse. Decide for yourself. Like I said, I think it's a couple of really tragic coincidences and not much else. But if that guy used real skeletons and we can verify that, I might be willing to change my viewpoint.
But did you hear anything about things happening on set?
I didn't hear much about that, no.
Oh, okay. I don't have anything because you told me not to research it, so I didn't. But in a few of the articles that I was reading about other things, they have to talk about it because that's the thing everyone knows. And little things apparently were happening on set too. I have nothing further to say on it, but...
Gotcha. Well, that's kind of my own fault, I guess, for telling you not to research it, so we could talk about it here. But yeah, so I guess maybe there was some disturbances while filming too. Spooky. Okay, so on to something a little more lighthearted. Drew Barrymore auditioned to play the role of Carol Ann.
Okay.
And Steven Spielberg loved her, but he thought she might be better suited for a movie he was producing or directing at the same time, E.T. So he cast her for E.T. after she auditioned for Poltergeist.
Which, by the way, that's why he didn't officially direct.
Yep, that's where I was going with that.
Oh, okay.
Yep. So E.T. did come out. Actually, its theatrical release was 1 week after Poltergeist. So they released basically against each other, and it was Spielberg versus Spielberg. Like Briana mentioned, some people believe it was secretly directed by Steven Spielberg. He was contractually obligated to direct E.T., and he couldn't direct both. And the way this movie was kind of conceived was Steven Spielberg and Tobe Hooper kind of got together, talked about it, fleshed it out, and that's where it came from. And I think a lot of people think Steven's original plan was to direct it himself, but the way the timing worked out, I guess he couldn't. And, Tobe Hooper came in. Tobe Hooper is on record as saying that the rumor got started when Spielberg was doing some small shots for him on location. Spielberg corroborated that. But at the very least, it's agreed on that Spielberg was a very hands-on producer on the set of this movie. Actress Zelda Rubinstein, who played Tangina, like we just mentioned, is actually quoted as saying that she was only on set for 6 days of a 12-week shoot, but the 6 days that she was there, she claimed Steven Spielberg was directing her. There's no, confirmation or corroboration, but that's what she said. But that said, I think that might be kind of an insult to Tobe Hooper himself. He is the master of horror. Like you said, he's easily capable of making a great movie like this. He co-wrote and directed Texas Chainsaw Massacre before this.
Yeah.
And the British Film Institute cited him as one of the most influential horror filmmakers of all time. So, I get the conspiracy, and it wouldn't totally surprise me, but at the same time, I feel like it kind of shortchanges Hooper a little bit, who's just a really talented dude. The next thing would be Steven Spielberg lobbied for a PG rating for this movie. Initially, the MPAA gave it an R rating.
Which is crazy. And that's only because PG-13 didn't exist yet.
Exactly. You are just stepping over everything I'm about to talk about all the time.
So sorry.
So Spielberg got it down from an R to a PG by basically lobbying the MPAA and saying, hey, I don't make R-rated movies. I make PG movies. And now I love Steven Spielberg as an artist, but I think it's worth noting that this was like 6 or 7 years after Jaws came out, which I think we can agree probably not a PG movie.
Wait, so what was Jaws rated?
PG.
Are you serious?
Yeah, Jaws was rated PG. So,
okay.
But this released in 1982, just 2 years later, after complaints about violence in films like Temple of Doom, which was directed by Steven Spielberg, and Gremlins, which was produced by Steven Spielberg. It led the MPAA to roll out a new rating between PG and R called PG-13. This rating was suggested by Steven Spielberg.
Oh, okay, that's cool. I didn't know that part.
Yeah, so I mean, you could look back at the entire catalog of Steven Spielberg's career and say he is the best PG-13 director of all time, and without him, we probably don't even have the rating.
It's crazy because there's one scene in particular that I think warrants a higher rating than PG, but I also can't see this today being rated PG. That's crazy.
Absolutely not. Yeah, this would be a solid PG-13. I don't think this would be an R today.
No.
I don't really think there's much in the way of language, and there really isn't too much in the way of gore. There are a couple things, but the effects kind of render it a moot point at this point in time.
Yeah.
Okay, and so my very last one, not nearly as deep as these. It's actually an actual flesh wound. The dog. Did you catch the dog's name during the movie?
You said it a couple times, but it was a strange name, so I didn't really retain it.
Yeah, so the dog's name is E-Buzz.
Yeah.
E.Buzz, like Buzz Lightyear. Watching this movie, I think we can both agree he was like the goodest boy of all good boys.
Cute.
The name E-Buzz came from a sketch on Saturday Night Live with Dan Aykroyd, who played E-Buzz Miller, who is a character described as a pimp who critiques naked Victorian art.
What?
I haven't looked up anything to verify or clarify that because it exists perfectly in my mind and I have no desire to change that. So there you go. That's what we have.
Okay, that was a good one. All right, so let's get into the film.
Let's do it.
So it starts with the Star-Spangled Banner. We're viewing a television screen extremely close up so that we can barely make out the imagery, but you can see pieces like, I think the Lincoln Memorial is in there, and that military statue of the soldiers. Thank you. I never know what that one's for. Massively confused by this starting because in the scary movie world, you start off with ominous music, something sinister happening, and instead we get patriotism.
Well, I would say, first of all, your direct quote was, "Is this real? This is the weirdest thing I've ever seen," as the movie was starting. I think it's great because it's the sort of opening that at the time, going into it fresh like you did, is confusing. But when you look back on it, having seen the whole movie, it does seem menacing. And I think that that's kind of genius.
I disagree.
No?
I'm still confused by it. I thought there was a reason that you said that you were holding.
Yeah, well, there's a reason that they do the Star-Spangled Banner. So keep in mind, this is, the early 80s, late 70s. This is the middle of the Cold War. And this is also maybe 30 years into the invention of television. So what this is back in the day, they didn't have programming on channels 24 hours a day.
Right.
So at a certain time, 2, 3 a.m., they would go off air. And most channels would have some sort of sign-off. They would do something to signify that it's the end of their broadcast day. And that's where you get like those red-green bars that we're all familiar with and the static. So that's what it was. It was the end of the broadcast day. And what that means is the static is starting. And as we find out, they come through the static.
Okay. So that's weird that TV just stops and it goes to static.
Yeah, I mean, I think, when we were kids, for the most part, it became infomercials. And nowadays, I think it's just most places have 24-hour programming.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what it was before. It would just be static or like a static image, one of those broadcast test images.
Okay,
it would just be nothing. So that was their sign off from the broadcast day.
Got it. We zoom out from the TV as it turns to static. And we see a man is asleep in front of the TV. It's Coach. There's the golden retriever, and the camera follows the dog as he kind of makes his rounds around the house. It's almost like he's checking on everybody else that lives there.
Yeah.
He goes to the master bedroom and checks on Mom. He goes to Dana's room, the teenage daughter. Goes into Robbie and Carol Ann's room. Carol Ann wakes up and she goes downstairs. The static on the TV is really intense. It is flashing a lot. I mean, could not get over it.
Have you ever had one of those like really old like dial TVs that are like that?
No.
See, I had one as a kid, and that, I mean, it was exaggerated a little, but those things did light up a room. That wasn't much of an exaggeration.
I mean, it was, my eyes hurt. She sits super close to the TV, so close that it reminds me of when like parents used to say that you're going to go blind if you keep staring at the TV like that. And then she says hello to the TV and starts asking questions like, what do you look like? Now, normally, you know, she's like the creepy kid in this, right? But I don't find her creepy. She is way too adorable and precious.
Oh, yeah, she's adorable. So she is, I don't think I would consider her like a creepy kid in the sense that like scary movies have creepy kids. I think she's just a very cute kid who got caught up in a creepy thing.
Yeah. She's the cutest.
She is precious.
Coach wakes up and he's looking at Carol Ann talking to the TV like, what the hell's going on? And she's counting. I don't really understand that. But then she says, I don't know. And then she pauses and says, I don't know. So it's like they're asking her questions that she can hear and she's responding. Then she puts her hands onto the screen and that's it for the scene. We switch over to morning. We see more credits. They show the actors, the producers, and this is where I learned that Spielberg was involved, which I was surprised because it didn't say that he was directing it. And I was like, what? He's here, but not as the director. Or was he? The camera pans over like this large subdivision in this sort of lovely mountainous valley area. It's Sunday because the coach has a handful of friends over to watch football. Mom is cleaning up in the kids' room. She trips on roller skates, and then the bird cage in the kids' room catches her eye. And she looks closely and says, "Aw, shit, Tweety, couldn't you have waited for a school day?" So the bird died.
That is sad.
Yes, but you know what? I kind of, as I was rewriting my notes, I thought a little bit more into this. I feel like it was either an omen or a sign that things are already happening in the house. That's what I initially thought.
Oh, for sure.
But I have sort of a different theory that's formulated, and I'll pull that in later.
I think I know where you're going with this.
So stay tuned. Back in the living room, the guys are very into the game when it changes suddenly to Mr. Rogers.
I love this scene because the adults don't know who Mr. Rogers is. Like, all the guys are like, who is this guy? What's
really?
going on here? Yeah. And it's like, it's Mr. Rogers. What?
I didn't catch that because I was nervous. I was thinking, oh no, this is another sign that things are happening in the house. But then they start talking about the remote and that so Coach says my neighbor has the same remote, and now I'm confused. I'm like, what the hell is he talking about?
Late 70s problems.
Yeah, so they go out to the neighbor and they yell across the like fence to each other, and he's like, my kid wants to watch Mr. Rogers, and he's like, well, we want to watch the game. And then they get into a channel changing war. The neighbor says, you should move your TV, it's too close to mine. What is happening?
Well, I mean, so remotes work on waves. A lot of them today are infrared, so you kind of have to like line it up. But a lot of them back in the day used like radio waves and stuff like that. So if you were on the same frequency as your neighbor, it could cause an issue. Now, the real solution here is for these guys to just stop screaming at each other. One of them put on the channel with the remote, and the other go change their TV by hand on the television set, because you could do that back then.
Oh.
That's the solution, but this is a petty neighbor squabble, and they're not interested in a solution. They are interested in winning, as it always is the case with your neighbors.
Yeah, well, it's just kind of telling us like, oh, we live in suburbia, here we are, everything's normal, everything's average.
During the opening credits, you see like an overhead shot of like the neighborhood they live in, and it looks miserable.
Yeah, it's just this typical development subdivision that's just truly awful.
Yeah.
Back to Mom, she's about to flush Tweety down the toilet.
Did people do that? Birds?
I don't know about a bird.
Yeah, I mean, I understand a fish, but a bird?
Yeah, that seems awful.
I mean, you just put that at the bottom of the trash can, and like the child will not find it. Yeah. It's fine.
But Carol Ann caught her, and she
sure
gasps.
did.
Then we switch over to Robbie, who's outside. He's staring up at a large tree, and he's looking at it as though he's gone outside every single day and contemplating climbing this tree, but he always chickens out or something. Since Carol Ann caught her mom trying to flush the bird, they're now in the kitchen putting Tweety in a box. Carol Ann is very upset. This really made me sad. She says Tweety doesn't like the smell, and she asks Mom to add a flower into the box. She adds a photo of her, Robbie, and the dog for when he gets lonely, and a blanket for when it's nighttime.
And a piece of licorice, because he liked licorice.
Oh.
Yeah,
I didn't notice that.
I am genuinely surprised Briana didn't cry at this part, and I think telling her the licorice thing just now is making her cry.
It's really sweet. Back to Robbie. He's now in the tree. He's looking up at it still, kind of maybe figuring out how to climb more or just thinking about it. And then Mom and Carol Ann bury the box in the yard. Carol Ann says a prayer over the bird. Then once they're finished, she's like, "Can I get a goldfish?"
And Robbie, who's up in the tree and he's watching all this. So the other two siblings are there, and the older sister, Dana, is just kind of a dick about it.
Yeah.
Like, as soon as Carol Ann starts praying, she's like, "Are you kidding me? Like, why are you even standing there? Just go somewhere else." Like, this is why teenage girls are the worst.
She's a teenager.
But Robbie is in the tree, and he's looking down and he yells, "After it rots, can we dig it up and see its bones?" Which was kind of alarming, but also careful what you wish for, kid.
Oh, yeah. I didn't write that down. So that is foreshadowing. It's nighttime now. There's a thunderstorm. Carol Ann is feeding her new goldfish, so she did get one. Robbie is reading a comic book. He's sitting on the edge of his bed, facing the window, which looks out to the tree that he had just climbed. But he's really nervous, and that tree is scary, which is why he's nervous. It has like these huge nubs on it that look like faces. Yeah,
the knobs definitely look like faces in this scene. I'm sure that's intentional. It's we all do that when we're kids. Like, everything looks menacing in the dark. Kind of at this point in the movie, you're kind of, is that tree sinister, or is he just a scared kid?
Yeah.
Is this a Courage the Cowardly Dog situation?
Well, Mom comes in and puts him to bed. It's all, very typical and sweet. She's about to leave their room, but Carol Ann reminds her about the closet. And Mom goes to turn the closet light on and, of course, leaves the door mostly closed, but a little bit open.
And it's important to note that as she goes over to the closet, you see this like really creepy clown doll that's on this chair at the end of Robbie's bed. It's like firmly in the middle of the screen as she goes to the closet.
Which I somehow completely
Which Briana
missed.
completely missed.
Thankfully. I see it later for sure. It's terrifying. She leaves the room, fully closing the door, which this is just all wrong, okay? First of all, closet doors must be shut. I guess if the light is on,
well, yeah, that's the thing. The
an
light's
open
on.
Closet door isn't as scary, but it's so weird that people actually sleep with the bedroom door fully closed.
It's weird to me that you find this weird. Prior to meeting you, I have slept with the bedroom door closed every single night of my life.
I can't.
And
I can't.
Your family has made me feel like I am an absolute lunatic for doing that. I'm a millennial. I want to die. I don't care about, what's better for home defense, but
I need the door open. I need to hear the things.
I'd rather have it closed, but that's just me.
Next, Coach and Mom are in bed. They're watching TV. They're talking. They're getting high. Mom is
parents smoke weed.
She's going on about like a sleepwalking story. I think she has sleepwalked, or the teenage daughter sleepwalks.
No, Carol Ann. She's worried about Carol Ann sleepwalking because Dad found her talking to the television last night.
Okay.
Did you watch this movie?
There were just a lot of like family conversations that were happening, and I was like, I don't need to pay attention.
Well, and that's actually a great spot for me to just throw this in there. This is a wonderful family. Okay.
I love them so. I literally have overall light and sweet. I love this family and want nothing bad to happen ever.
Absolutely. I feel like a lot of movies, in the horror genre, other genres, kind of lean on like shitty personal conflict to drive the plot forward. And that was not the case here at all. The plot was driven by how much this family loved and cared for each other.
Love
and
this
it's
family.
a breath of fresh air.
Yeah. They're so sweet. The parents love each other. They love the kids. They're good parents. Like, it's so nice. Then I guess they're going to be putting in a pool, like that's forthcoming, and she starts panicking about the pool. Like, what if Carol Ann sleepwalks into the pool before there's water in it? Which is such a specific concern. I think if there's water in it, that should also be a concern too. But either way. Meanwhile, the kids are still awake. Robbie's eyes are wide open as he stares out the window at the tree and the storm. So the combo of the tree and the storm, he's freaking out. Carol Ann's awake. She's just looking at her fish. Robbie turns over and looks at a large clown doll sitting in a chair.
And Briana screamed at this.
I hate this clown. I screamed for sure.
Yeah, because she hadn't seen it in the previous scene. She didn't know it was there. I feel like it's not really a jump scare if you see it before, but maybe it was just kind of subtly put there before, and maybe a lot of people didn't see it. I don't know.
And he's obviously afraid of it, rightfully so, because Although, clowns don't scare me except for one clown, the one from American Horror Story. But this one's face isn't friendly at all.
No, let me tell you something about clowns. Fuck them. All of them. Okay, I hate clowns. And the fact that any parent would think that putting this thing on like a rocking chair at the foot of your child's bed is a good idea, I take back everything I just said about them being a wonderful family. They're terrible parents.
Well, and he does like finger guns to it, so he does not like this thing. He gets out of bed. He covers it up with a jacket. Is this like a nightly thing that this poor child has to do?
Apparently. I'm sure he's asked his parents several times to remove the clown, and they say, son, we can't remove it. Terrible things will happen.
Maybe it's a family heirloom.
Yeah.
Back in the parents' room, they're laughing. They're just kind of like joking around, fooling around, having a good time. And Robbie comes in because he's completely afraid. So they just pick him up. Coach picks him up, puts him on his shoulders, brings him right back to bed. Robbie says that he doesn't like the tree and he wants to cut it down.
Just a real quick note here. It was something you actually pointed out when we were watching the movie, and I'm surprised you didn't mention it. When Robbie comes in the room, before like addressing him, the mom takes one more hit of her joint before putting it down. And then she's like, yo, what's up, Robbie?
She's looking right at him and she's like, oh, gotta take one more.
Yeah, looking sillier and sillier for calling them a great family at this point.
No, I still love them. Coach explains that the tree is very old and has been there longer than the house before his company built the neighborhood. And he adds that it's a wise old tree. Coach is respecting what was on the land. Okay, that's important. He settles both the kids, gives them kisses and stuff again. But the next scene, all four of them are asleep in the parents' bed. So obviously this resettling of the children didn't quite work with the storm. The TV is on. It's playing the Star-Spangled Banner again. So it's that end of night programming that I've just learned about.
Which Briana turns to me and says, oh, American propaganda. Which, again, I just had to remind her, it's the height of the Cold War. Well, not the height, but this is the Cold War here. So, we need to have all this propaganda.
Sure.
Else we lose to the commies.
Right. The TV switches to static. And it is aggressively flashing again. It is so bright. I'm wondering how they're sleeping. You need the TV on when you sleep, okay? So that's a compromise that we've worked on. But I don't like the switching of colors and brightness. So Family Guy is one of your comfort shows. I don't like Family Guy to be a night show because it's constantly flashing and changing. So I'm a sitcom girl. Seinfeld, great night show because it never changes brightness. It is stable brightness. Don't know how they're sleeping.
I guess you just get used to it. I mean, I could fully be asleep in that. I don't think I would be able to fall asleep, but I think if I were asleep, it wouldn't wake me up.
It is like lightning is constantly flashing in the room. That's how bright this is. So Carol Ann wakes up because she's smart. She's smiling and she crawls to the end of the bed and we can hear whispering. So the first time this happened, we couldn't hear anything as viewers, but now we can hear whispering and she's hearing that too. So she gets close to the TV again and a hand jumps out of the television.
This was the loudest scream we have had on the podcast to date. Briana completely lost it.
I think I wasn't expecting any jump scares in this movie.
Why?
I don't know.
Huh.
Maybe just because of the way that it starts, I felt very relaxed and I just liked the family. And I was like, I'm just watching a nice family film from the 80s. I don't know.
That's how they get you. That's great filmmaking right there.
But in all the other kinds of films, I am expecting it. And there wasn't even anything leading up to it. There was no signal that was going to happen. There was no tell at all. So it really freaked me out.
Loved it.
It reaches from the TV to the wall at the head of the bed. So it's like above where the parents are sleeping. And then the whole room starts to rumble like there's an earthquake happening. Everyone wakes up. Carol Ann turns around and says,
"They're here."
Iconic.
Now it's the morning and there's construction going on in the yard to dig for the pool. They dig up right over where the bird was just buried.
Yeah, you get a really good shot of like the cigar box that the bird was buried in, like being kicked up and tipped over, which again, just another great, brilliant use of foreshadowing.
Right. So I kind of was like, this is symbolic. This is where I went into my like little theory. So Carol Ann showed us the importance of respecting the dead. Mom was about to take a shortcut by flushing it down the toilet, but Carol Ann made her do it right. And by right, I mean like, the traditional Christian, you're supposed to bury the dead situation. That's, quote unquote, the right way. She gave the bird a service and a burial. Then all that basically went to shit with the construction. Something to keep in mind for later. I also think the tree plays into this as a physical representation for what there was before. So for what was there before. And we learn a bit about Coach's character from the fact that he respects that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Wow. Did you come up with all that yourself?
By myself completely.
Wow. I mean, that sounds like it's from like a midterm, you know?
It's that English degree coming right out.
Finally.
Mom is serving up breakfast. Everyone is just playful. They're joking around. They're like arguing. You know, the kids are arguing with each other, but it's not mean, really. She asks Carol Ann what she meant last night by, you know, who's here. And Carol Ann just says it's the TV people. Robbie picks up a glass full of way too much milk, and it just shatters from the bottom. The TV switches to static, the TV that they have playing in the kitchen.
Well, actually, Carol Ann turns it to static.
Oh,
if you watch, it's very subtle. Like, I don't want to say subtle because she does it right in front of the camera, but like, they don't really ever make mention of it. But she just kind of climbs up on the counter, and you see her hand just like hit the top button and turn it to static.
Oh.
She did that to talk to her TV people friends.
Oh. Robbie looks at his silverware, and it's all bent up.
Spoopy.
Yeah. Dana's leaving for school. She's in a uniform. It seems like she either goes to a private school or maybe a religious school. And she leaves out the backyard, and the construction workers catcall her. She flips them off, basically. And this annoyed me so much. Again, we just said these people are great parents, but the mom watched this happen from the kitchen and just laughs.
I loved it. She's like, oh, you guys, you're always trying to rape my daughter.
Yeah, they're sexually harassing a child. She is a teenager. And she's just like, LOL, it's fine.
It was a different time.
I hate it. It made me so mad.
This is a very pre-Me Too world.
Mom turns to Carol Ann, who's basically inside the TV again. And she says, oh, honey, you're going to hurt your eyes. And she switches the knob to whatever, a television show.
Well, actually, this is something that I want to kind of see if there's more to this. But what she says is the static isn't good for you. She specifically says it isn't good for you. And then when she turns the channel, it's like a war movie. And Carol Ann is watching violence. She's watching these soldiers blow people up and get killed and get shot at. And I have to assume that was intentional, right? Like that has to be like a statement about what was or wasn't acceptable at the time.
Yeah, I like that. Look at you coming up with your own theories.
And I didn't even go to college.
Up in the bedroom, the dog is on the bed barking at the spot where the flash hit the wall last night. He jumps off, he retrieves a ball and brings it onto the bed as though someone is asking him to play fetch. And Mom is watching all of this. Then she goes back to the kitchen and one of the workers is eating through an open window.
Yeah, he just like takes a soup spoon and like dabs it in her sauce pot and sips it. Yeah, that's actually, you said, ew, are you kidding me? As this scene unfolded.
Well, I hate those guys. And now he's being disgusting.
His name was Bluto, like the Popeye villain.
Oh,
yeah.
I didn't catch that reference. But she just kind of like playfully kicks him out and sighs. But she kind of feels unsettled. Like she turns around and she's looking at the kitchen table. And then Carol Ann comes up from behind and surprises her enough so that she screams. She looks at the table and the chairs are all pushed out. So she asks Carol Ann if she did that. And she says,
And she's like, you kids, I always tell you to push in your chair. She doesn't give it a second thought.
Yeah.
She's got stupid lying children.
So she fixes the chairs, turns her back, and when she looks back again, the chairs are now stacked on the table.
Beautiful. And this was actually done in one take. They didn't even have to do it a second time. What happened was the camera panned over to her under the sink, and a crew brought in the pre-assembled stack of chairs and took away the old chairs while it was panned over. They did it all actual one take.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Well, she knows Carol Ann didn't do that. So she goes, TV people? And Carol Ann says, And she asks if she can see them. And Carol Ann says, no. And then Carol Ann says, can you? And she says, no.
I love this family. They communicate in a lot of and uh-huhs, which is just, it's adorable. It's precious.
Coach comes home from work. He's like a real estate agent for the development, I gather. Mom excitedly runs outside to get him and bring him inside quickly.
Yeah, she's got some major manic vibes here. Like, you are a little worried about her at this point, if you're her husband or friend or anybody.
She pulls him into the kitchen and says, reach back into our past when you had an open mind. So on the floor, there's like a circle of tape, maybe.
Tape, yeah.
And then
tape.
As you look down the line of the kitchen, there's an arrow and then another circle. And she puts a chair in the first circle and it kind of rumbles and then slides across the floor, follows the arrow into the other circle, all on its own accord.
She's even got marks in the circle for where the legs of the chair are, like little circles where the legs go. She's got it down. It goes from an exact spot to an exact spot. And she has seemingly spent the entire afternoon figuring this out.
And when the chair does that, she like says, woohoo, and she like jumps up. She's very like manic is actually a really great explanation. Carol Ann had come in too and said that she's hungry. She wants pizza. Then she puts a helmet on Carol Ann and sits her in the circle, and the same thing happens. So Carol Ann gets dragged across the floor. And Coach's face is just like, what is happening?
As it should be. That is an appropriate reaction.
The next scene is at the neighbors. It's a weird scene because they have this whole conversation about mosquito bites, and you can hear the mosquitoes like zipping around.
Yeah, if this scene had like deeper meaning, it was 100% lost on me, but I feel like the scene would make a lot more sense if there was like a deleted scene of them like getting high while they talk about this kitchen problem. And that because of them being high, it makes that entire scene make sense.
Yeah, I feel like maybe it's just, again, that whole suburbia thing, like, oh, we got to go over to the neighbor and make small talk because everything's fine. And also, Coach is very much like, he's the science-minded one here, it seems like, even though they don't explicitly go into that whatsoever. He is the one who is not believing what's happening. And he very much wants to hide what is happening. So I feel like he wants to be really chill in his approach.
Yeah, he's definitely afraid, you know, if word gets out that there's a potential issue here, it could hurt his business, hurt the family's income. My question is, though, why do they not have another neighbor that doesn't hate them that they could go talk to about this?
So they have this like weird conversation about the mosquitoes, and finally they get out the point, which is like, have you experienced any disturbances in your house? And the neighbor just looks at them like they're crazy. I found a fun little fact about these two scenes. So the scene in the kitchen and then the neighbor scene, I guess. And this didn't happen to us. We saw the full scene. But apparently this scene used to be cut strangely because Carol Ann, when she asks for pizza, she actually asks for Pizza Hut. But then Coach, I guess, says something disparaging about Pizza Hut. And I don't know exactly what he said, but it was bad enough for, I guess, Pizza Hut to complain. So they cut the scene, but they cut it in the middle of something the mom is saying. So people had so many questions about it. They were like, what happens? What's with this scene in Poltergeist? Why is it cut like that?
That's so weird, because now that you mention that earlier, I do remember the mom saying, we'll get Pizza Hut tonight or something like that.
Yeah.
She does mention it.
Yeah.
And wow.
But they must have fixed it later because we saw the full. It wasn't a weird cut.
Yeah.
Huh. Because I watched it on YouTube. I was like, what are they talking about?
Do you remember him saying
cut?
anything bad about Pizza Hut? I don't remember him saying anything
I think they cut that out.
Oh, I see. So they still cut it out. They just edited it better.
Since then, yeah. I think that's what happened.
All right.
Back at home, they're tending to the mosquito bites that Coach got while he was having this like 3-minute conversation. And they're talking about what can they do, but they really don't know who they could call. Ghostbusters.
Yeah, and over the course of this conversation, like the mother is kind of expressing, like, I don't think this phenomena is a malevolent force. I don't think this is going to hurt us. And he's a little more on the skeptical side. Like, maybe he believes, but even if he believes, he's not ready to accept that it's not something evil.
Right.
So I thought that was funny because I feel like in that situation, it would be reversed if it were us, where I would be the one being like, oh, it's fine. And you'd be the one being like, no, that thing's evil.
It wouldn't even be a matter of is it evil or not. It would just be a matter of absolutely not. Can this be happening? We're selling the house. Stat.
All right.
There's another storm. Robbie is now counting between lightning and thunder because previously Coach had told him to do that. If you're able to count longer, that means the storm is moving away.
But this one is getting closer.
Yeah. And then suddenly the scary tree, breaks through the window and pulls him out. This was a scary scene. Obviously, this is giant crash, so parents and Dana come running in.
Yeah, this is definitely a scene that's like, this is nightmare fuel for children.
Oh, yeah.
Like, this is the scene that stays with you, you know, this and the clown. The TV thing's kind of creepy, but I feel like if you're like a 10-year-old kid, you probably don't have a staticky TV in your bedroom anyway, but most kids have windows in their rooms.
Yeah, the TV aspect of this is not scary at all. I can't, again, this being PG, I can't imagine being a child and seeing that tree scene. That would absolutely traumatize me. We again hear the whispering and the closet door opens and the light comes out. It's super bright.
Yeah, and I feel like the whispering was even more clear and loud this time. So I feel like each successive instance, it's gotten clearer, it's gotten louder, and that's kind of your signal that they're getting closer and closer to this physical world.
Mm-hmm. Caroline calls out for her mom, but they're outside trying to save Robbie, obviously. Everything is getting pulled into the closet because there's just this whirlwind happening in the room. She flies into the closet. So she's trying to hold on to the bed, but because the wind is so strong, it like breaks the headboard and it just takes her right in. They're able to save Robbie. The whole tree uproots, and I think it like flies up away into like a cyclone, right?
Yeah, there was like a tornado coming in the back of the scene, and the tornado kind of uprooted the tree. So Robbie is like in the process of being eaten by the tree, and his dad manages to get him out. The scene was actually shot in reverse, and it seemed much smoother because they shot it with him coming out of the tree and then reversed it, so it looked better.
Oh, that's cool. They run back inside and find the bedroom empty except for like the mattresses, which are all pressed up against the closet door. They move all that stuff away to get into the closet, and they find what looks like a body with a blanket over it. Removing the blanket, they find that it's that friggin' clown. And I think Mom laughs in relief that like, okay, now we know she's just somewhere in the house. It's fine. They go on a whole search looking for her. They're calling for her. They are running around looking in every closet. In the master, the TV is on to static. Mom remembers the pool and freaks out. So Coach runs out and he like dives into the big hole that is going to be the pool. It's filled with water because it's been raining so much and mud. So he's literally diving into this. It's deep enough for him to dive into it and see if she's there, but he comes up with nothing. Robbie's in the master. He's freaking out at the TV. Is it because he can hear her?
Yeah, he can hear her at this point. Caroline is speaking, calling for her mother.
Yeah. And he screams for Mom. She comes in thinking, he found her. So good. But then she realizes that Caroline is in the TV.
Whoa.
Mm-hmm. The next scene is Coach meeting with a woman. That's Dr. Lesh and two men, Ryan and Marty. And they deal with the paranormal in some way. So they're like investigators. Dr. Lesh, by the way, looks fabulous. I know it's the 80s, but her glasses, they're giant and I love them. And her silky shirt with like a bow at the neck, I'd wear that right now.
Yeah, I don't think it'd be a surprise to anybody that knows you that old woman from the 80s fits your aesthetic.
Coach, however, looks awful.
Oh, he like aged 4 years overnight. He looks terrible.
Despite the great chunky sweater that he's wearing, he just is run down. He has dark circles all around his eyes. Dr. Lesh is leading the meeting and asks if the family would allow for an investigation. They do, and the next scene is Coach giving them a tour of the house, basically, while he's like finishing off a Budweiser.
Yeah, he's drinking a beer. I mean, he needs that
unwell.
beer. He deserves it.
He takes them to the bedroom, but it's locked, and he explains that they don't go in there anymore. So obviously it's been a while. It hasn't just been like the next day. They specifically say they don't go in there anymore. So opening the door, stuff is flying all around the room.
Yeah, it's like a whirlwind of their stuff. And this, unfortunately, didn't age very well.
No.
Today it looks kind of silly. Maybe it was menacing back then. I don't know. But this would be a much more effective scene with, like, redone CGI. Not that I'm, in favor of, like, George Lucas-style remasters or anything. But the dated effects really take away from this scene, I would say, at this point.
Well, I also just don't know that, like, during the daytime, random stuff flying around a room is particularly scary. It wasn't scary objects. It was just like records and
no, Brianna,
a lamp.
If there were a room in this house where there was a whirlwind of all of our stuff, you would not let us live here.
Correct. If that was happening in my life.
Scary.
But is it scary in a movie to watch? I don't know that that's a scary scene.
The problem is you're thinking like you're watching a movie. You can't be watching a movie while you watch the movie. You got to be in it.
Okay. Next, Dr. Lesh is having tea with the family, and she's shaking. Like, she's holding this tea cup, and it's shaking. And I just wonder why. Like, this is their job. Maybe they've never experienced something so intense or so obvious.
Yeah, the other two, like, researchers, Marty and, I'm sorry, what was the other one's name?
Ryan.
Marty and Ryan, they kind of, they're almost excited. And they talk to the family about how it took them like a month to capture a little Matchbox car rolling across the floor of a room by itself. I don't think they've ever seen anything that is irrefutably real. You see weird things that happen from time to time. Okay, like that's weird, but it is what it is. But there's assuming that, you touch that stuff in the little weird tornado there is no way that this can be explained by anything normal.
Yeah.
So it excites them. It seems to spook her.
She says that the house being haunted is undetermined. And as she's saying that, the tea kettle like slides across the table by itself. And she explains that the root may be a poltergeist over a house haunting. And Coach is like, what's the difference? During this conversation, the lights flicker and the mom explains that there'll be 2 more, and that happens. So again, they've developed a routine with this. They know what's going on. They know how things work.
Yeah.
This has been going on for a little bit.
It's really sad because, like, obviously you wouldn't live in this kind of environment. Like, if Carol Ann weren't trapped / missing,
right,
they're going to remove themselves from this environment immediately. It seems like just an awful way to live. I would probably leave you behind. I'm sorry.
That's so sad. No. Among other differences, Dr. Lesh says poltergeists typically last a short time while a haunting could go on for years. And she went on about this, but I didn't quite catch everything that she was saying. So I did go to Google just to see, like, what's the difference between a poltergeist and a haunting, but I couldn't find anything specific about that. All I could find was stuff comparing ghosts, poltergeists, and demons.
Yeah, so one other thing that she says in this scene is poltergeists haunt a person, whereas a haunting it takes place in a location. And as far as, like, quote unquote real ghost lore, I don't know how true that is, but I can tell you the difference between a poltergeist and a ghost. So poltergeist is German for noisy ghost.
Yeah.
The difference between a ghost or a phantom and a poltergeist is a poltergeist manifests in the physical world. A poltergeist will make knocking sounds. A poltergeist will move objects. A regular ghost, a regular haunting cannot interact with the physical world.
Huh.
That's the difference. So I've heard.
Well, they head into the living room and Mom turns on the TV to static, and she says it's because they can hear her best that way. And she calls for Caroline.
And I love,
Carol
like,
Ann.
right before this scene, she prefaces this with, "This might seem a little strange." Yeah. After everything they've just seen, she's like, this, I know you've just seen, like, a weird tornado and everything keeps happening, but this part's going to be a little weird for you.
The dog comes in and barks, then gets back on his hind legs while the mom continues to call on Carol Ann to say hello to her or to her dad. Carol Ann comes through and says that there's a bright light, but she's afraid of it. And Dr. Lesh urgently tells Mom to relay to Carol Ann that, don't go to the light. It's a way out, but not for Carol Ann. Marty, despite being a paranormal investigator, is a skeptic, and he says that the voice may be coming from a transmitter somewhere else in the house. And the mom is like, this is not fake, but he goes upstairs to, like, inspect.
Yeah, well, even Dr. Lesh shuts that down immediately. She's like, this isn't a hoax. Like, She is on board. She believes this family, and after everything they've seen, how can you not?
Right. Well, it gets worse because a cloud forms in the ceiling and drops, like, a bunch of trinkets. Carol Ann says that someone is here and she's scared. They hear a thumping coming from upstairs. Mom goes to the stairs and she gasps like she was going to try to run up the stairs, but wind kind of whooshes over her. And she says that Carol Ann moved through her and she knows it's her because she can smell her.
Yeah, she touched her soul.
Yeah, it was kind of like a sad moment.
Yeah, and then she, like, makes everyone smell the sweater. She's like, smell it, I smell her. Like, this Dr. Lesh is going to know what Carol Ann smells like.
Right.
But,
More thumping and wind, and then we hear growling. So a mean one is coming through. A huge gust of wind, strong enough to blow everyone over, happens. And Dr. Lesh asks to know where Carol Ann was when she was taken. And Coach says it was in the bedroom, but they won't let you in. Marty comes back downstairs, but something, like, huge bit him. So, and they didn't really elaborate on that, I feel like.
Yeah, he just went in there and he's like, oh, something bit me. And he pulls up his shirt and you see some teeth marks. It's kind of like a wide oval-shaped mouth.
Yeah.
Maybe like a dog, like a weird ghost dog. I don't know.
But it's way bigger. Okay, so later that night, everyone is sleeping in the living room. Ryan and Marty kind of stay up with the equipment and they're, like, monitoring stuff. But Dr. Lesh and Mom are awake and they're chatting. They drink some bourbon that Dr. Lesh just had on her, like, right out of the bottle. I
love it. Like, she is here doing this job and she's got that flask on her, and this mom is here just like, fuck yeah, pass that over.
Yeah, you need
I love this lifestyle. This is the lifestyle for me.
She admits that she's terrified. So Dr. Lesh, again, she's the professional and she's nervous. Robbie wakes up too and starts asking questions, leading them to kind of talk about death and souls and heaven and all that stuff.
Yeah, Robbie was very open-minded during this scene. I feel like it was,
Yeah.
that character. He just, along with the rest of the family, his questions were aimed around getting his sister back. He just wanted Carol Ann back, and you'll live to see it.
Later, Marty finishes off a bag of chips and tells Ryan that he's going to go into the kitchen to get a snack.
Okay, I am fully aware that I'm talking so much this episode, but I actually had a funny little thing there, too.
What?
So there's a scene in Scream, which I know you've seen. You probably might not remember this, but it is a scene in Scream where Gail Weathers, who's Courtney Cox's character, is off doing something, and her cameraman is in the van. And right before Ghostface comes up and kills him, they show him finishing off a bag of Cheetos.
Oh.
And given the nature of Scream as kind of a satire on the horror genre, I always felt like that was kind of an intentional nod to Poltergeist. Because they do zoom, that is product placement 101. They zoom in on that Cheetos label.
Yeah.
Yeah, I always thought that scene in Scream was kind of an homage to this.
Fun fact. So he goes into the kitchen and pulls out a friggin' whole ass steak.
Yeah, this is a nice cut ribeye. I would know as a professional, this is a ribeye. And he just pulls it out like barehanded meat. There's no wrapping, there's no paper.
Wrapping.
He just
No
grabs
plate.
a hunk of meat
Just takes it
from
right out.
the fridge. Love it. Did he bring that? Is he just helping himself to their nice steak?
I'm pretty sure the one who said that you're faking it is now just eating all of their food.
Yeah, I
like
mean,
a jackass.
That's a good cut of meat.
Initially it looked really fake. When he puts it on the counter, it looks more real. And when he sets it on the counter, he's also shoving a piece of fried chicken into his mouth. So he's just raiding the fridge. The steak moves across the counter. And as he's watching that, this part's so gross, but it looks like the steak is getting, if someone was underneath it, punching it up and it's just exploding from the middle.
Yeah, Brianna's direct quote during the scene was, ew, 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 it looks so fake, but also so gross.
It's so disgusting. I can't really explain it. It's almost like grinding the meat. It just looked nasty. He drops the chicken leg to the floor and suddenly it's covered in maggots. Ugh.
Delicious.
He runs into, I think maybe the laundry room off the kitchen or something.
Yeah, that's what it looked like. It
'Cause
looked like a
has,
wash
utility
basin or
sink,
something, yeah.
And he throws up in the sink. And then he's looking in the mirror and his skin starts getting cut and starts literally falling apart. The camera flashes to the sink where you kind of see blood in the sink, and then back up at the mirror. And every time they do that, go sink to mirror, his face is just getting worse. Except that the effect is sadly no longer effective.
Yeah, again, this is a scene that the effects aged very poorly, where he's basically pulling his own skin off of his face, but it is very clearly a fake head.
Yeah.
And another little fun tidbit, those were Steven Spielberg's hands ripping the flesh.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So this is another scene that could just be very scary and is in concept, but the effects just don't hold up today.
But at the time, again, this being PG, frightening.
If I'm
for
a child
kid.
watching this movie, we've probably already left because I won't stop screaming at this point.
But the face goes all the way down to the skeleton. So his face is off of his face and it's just in the sink and there's just chunks in the sink. It's really gross. But then all of a sudden he looks back again and everything's normal. And meanwhile, the machine kind of reading activity, it's almost like a liar detective thing, those lines. They're moving rapidly. So activity is happening, basically.
Paranormal activity?
Perhaps. Then smoke starts billowing down from upstairs. The bedroom door opens and that crazy bright light comes out, waking up everybody. A being floats down the stairs. I guess it was supposed to be scary, but to me, I found it to be very ethereal.
Yeah, it didn't seem super scary at the time to me either.
Almost and as I was looking closely at it, it looked almost like an alien shape in a really flowy gown.
Yeah. Alien or pumpkin?
Alien this time.
Okay.
The electricity goes nuts. The figure whizzes away past them and it's dark again. And they excitedly go back to watch the tape and it's much less bright and less defined, but actually there's several figures filing down the stairs. The next day, they ship Robbie off to Grandma's house with the dog alone in a taxi.
That's fine. I mean, it's the 80s, It's a
What
taxi.
does it's the 80s mean? They just put him in a car.
It's a taxi. It's a taxi that you have to call and get brought to you. It's not like it's just a random person. It's worse now in like an Uber. This is an actual taxi that's traceable. If he, abducts that child, they'll know.
I guess. It's so weird.
I don't think it's that weird.
In the kitchen, Dr. Lesh is talking about what fell from the ceiling, like jewelry and watches, and apparently some are very old, some aren't so old. But she says she's going to take it all back to the lab, and she assures the mom that Ryan is going to stay and she'll come back with some help.
Marty will not be coming back, however.
He's traumatized.
He's traumatized, yeah. And during this scene, you really just like, Dr. Lesh is so professional and like almost like assuring, like, because you really feel like she knows what she's doing, even though she doesn't, and she's told you that she doesn't.
Yeah.
And I just think that this is somebody I'd want taking care of me in this situation. She knows her stuff.
And I think maybe she's supposed to represent the viewers or something, because she's really taken to the family, specifically the mom, and she really wants to help them.
Yeah.
Coach's boss makes a surprise visit, and he makes it seem like a wellness check because Coach blamed the flu on his absence. But really, it's about business. The boss is panicked that Coach is leaving.
Yeah, and this scene is great because like the first like half of this scene with his boss is almost like an old sitcom where he's like trying to like cover up hauntings from his boss. Like weird things would be happening and he would like put his arm around him and turn him and redirect him.
Piano moves.
Yeah, it was very wacky. This movie does a really good job of inserting light little moments into these tense moments like this. The earlier when the coffee pot slid across the table.
Right.
You know, there's really good comic relief here.
So he shuffles his boss outside to get him away from all of this activity. And he's trying to get him to leave, really. But the boss just won't take it. And he's like, hey, let's go for a ride. I want to show you something. Meanwhile, Mom is cleaning stuff up around the house and she tries to go into the bedroom. She just maybe thinks, I'll give it a shot. And she knocks and opens the door, but it like roars at her and just slams shut.
As soon as she opens it. And Briana screamed at this as well.
I don't remember being afraid of that.
She just like opens the door, just like, ah, and then immediately slammed. And that was very uncomfortable for Briana.
Next, Coach and his boss are walking along a hill and he's trying to sell him on the lot. He says, like, what a great view of the mountains and all this could be yours. We're going to start the next phase of the build and we want you, Coach, to handle the whole thing, which is a huge opportunity, obviously. You know, obviously, probably too, the idea of moving is sounding good. I assume once they get Carol in, their whole idea is just to move. And if they could just simply move to another house in the development, that would be great.
I don't think that would be enough for me. I think I would have to get out of the state, personally.
Sure, yeah. But for him, he wouldn't
Right.
have to lose his job. And in fact, he would be getting like a promotion, basically.
That makes sense. Yeah, and he describes this house that he wants to build for him as like gorgeous.
Right. Coach says there isn't much space, though, because of the graveyard that they are literally walking up against. And the boss says they've already made arrangements to move it. And Coach is kind of astonished by this. And the boss is like, what? Like, it's just people. It's not an ancient burial ground. And we did it before right down there. And he points to like where Coach lives. So the implication, or even maybe more than an implication here, is that Coach's house is built over a cemetery.
Yeah, and Coach is incredulous. He's like, that's hallowed ground. You can't do that. You know, he's correct. I would not,
Absolutely, yeah.
So, I talk about that like uncle that I used to watch scary movies with. And, one of his favorite things to do was obviously scare the shit out of me. And his like favorite thing to do would be to tell me that the house was built on like an old Indian burial ground.
Oh my God.
And, nowadays he would say Native American, but back then he said Indian. And, he told me the ghosts were going to come up through the floor and get me. And I 100% believed him because why wouldn't I?
I hate that.
Yeah.
Oh God. Now it's nighttime and Dr. Lesh has returned and she's showing around a woman, Tangina.
Iconic.
She's tiny, plump, and has a high-pitched voice. Everyone is following them around and she says,
You don't mind hanging back? You're jamming my frequencies.
she's so cute.
Iconic.
Tangina's kind of just walking around trying to get a sense of the house, and she's upstairs exploring. And it's clear in Coach's demeanor that he just doesn't believe this.
Yeah, which is strange to me. I feel like considering everything I've seen up to this point, like it's out the window. I will believe literally anything at this point. If you tell me that this haunting is caused by Bigfoot, I would believe you.
Right.
Because I clearly know absolutely nothing about the way the world works now.
Exactly. Yeah, that's what I wrote too. I was like, why does he need, Dr. Lesh says she's cleared many houses. Like, why does he need any more information? Tangina calls down specifically to Coach and asks why the bedroom is locked. And there's a pause, and Coach has his eyes closed, and the mom says, well, answer her. And he says, I am. So he's trying to like screw with her and telepathically answer her. Like, shouldn't she? It's like telling, shouldn't the psychic have known I was coming? It's like, that's what he's doing.
Fair question.
So now he's kind of whispering like, I was just trying to, she should be able to hear me. And from the top of the stairs, Tangina says that she can hear him, but she just doesn't like tricks. So she's legit. She tells him that the house has many hearts. She takes Mom's hand and assures her that Carol Ann is alive and in the house, but on another plane. She explains that the point of origin is the bedroom closet and asks Mom, will you do anything I ask, even if it's contrary to your beliefs as a human and Christian? And Mom says yes.
That is a heavy question.
It's about to get real.
But that is like, imagine if somebody asks you that, you have to wonder, what are they going to ask me that would overrule my beliefs as a human?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
Is she going to ask me to eat somebody?
Maybe. Never know.
I would.
But also, this is like the third religious reference in an otherwise seemingly non-religious family. Well, and religion doesn't play into this except for these like random moments where it's mentioned. So I'm wondering, was that done to appease audiences in some way?
I don't necessarily think so. I think when you get into talking about the paranormal, it just kind of goes hand in hand, where if you accept the idea of ghosts, if you accept the idea of an afterlife, then you also probably accept the idea of a creator, because it's hard to imagine that there would be more after this unless it were specifically constructed for us. So I think that's where the God stuff comes in, because if you're acknowledging the existence of ghosts and demons, then the other stuff has to be real too, right?
I don't know. I mean, we're not going to get into a whole discussion of like religion and spirituality and all that right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's just something that always goes like unsaid in scary ghost movies. It's just kind of accepted already, and you just move on with that.
Okay. All right. She goes on to say that Carol Ann being a living presence in this other realm is like a major distraction for all of these spirits. They're attracted to her life force, and it's distracting them from getting to the real light that they need to go through, because for whatever reason, like they haven't passed over. Carol Ann must help them, and it's only the mom's voice that she can hear. Additionally, there's a negative presence, which is full of rage. She refers to it as a beast and says that she doesn't know what hovers over the house, but it's strong enough to punch a hole in this world and take Carol Ann.
When she said this, I went, yeah, the beast, 666, and Brianna admonished me and said, we don't say that in this house. So, sorry, everyone.
He's keeping Carol Ann away from the light, and he lies to her, like... It's she suspects that Carol Ann sees this beast figure as like a child, someone innocent. And then she wraps it up with,
now let's go get your daughter.
It's on. Mom starts calling for her, and Tangina says she's under restraint but feels safe, and they need to get her to respond. So she says, who is she more threatened by? Because whoever it is needs to be like mad or cross with her. She tells Coach to say that if she doesn't answer, she'll get spanked. And he's like offended by that suggestion. He's like, I don't spank them.
I love it. Love it. Okay. Like, I was born 5 years after this movie came out, and I got spanked. So I feel like this is a pretty progressive view at the time, and I am all for it.
It gets Carol Ann to respond, because he does say that. She asks about the light, and Tangina insists that she must go to it to guide the spirits. Mom's upset because she's basically forced to lie to her, to tell her that the light isn't bad and to go to it. They go into the bedroom. The lights are blinking, or the light from the closet is blinking, almost like the static from the TV. Ryan is instructed to wait by the other portal in the living room. So where all that stuff fell from the ceiling, that's like the second portal. They throw in a tennis ball with writing on it, which I didn't really realize. I saw them prepping this, but I was like, what are they doing? And they're throwing tennis balls through the closet to see if it will come out through the other portal. And it does, except it's like covered in this nasty goo. So they're like, okay, this is going to work. They get a rope ready, and Tangina can see that Carol Ann is at the mouth of the corridor and needs to be told not to actually go into the light. So Mom relays that message to her. They throw the rope in, and it comes out the other side. And then Mom and Tangina kind of have this argument over like who should go. Tangina's like, you've never done this before. And the mom's like, neither have you. And Tangina's like, You're right. It's you. Go ahead.
I loved how easily she gave up.
Yeah.
She's like, yeah, you know what?
Spot on.
You're right. I don't want to do this.
And then Coach kind of argues for him to go, but the mom insists.
She said he's the only one strong enough to hold the rope with her full body weight on it.
And they kiss like very passionately against the light. And it just felt like a very much like, I don't even know how to explain it. I just looked at that and I was like, this is a Spielberg film. It just made sense.
All right.
As she walks in, she yells, Steven, that's Coach's name, don't let go. And he says, never. And I just feel like that really influenced James Cameron.
Yeah.
Never let go, Jack.
I'm sure. I think I read an interview where he cited that scene as an inspiration for the entire movie, actually.
Yeah, the event of the Titanic was not the inspiration. It was just this singular scene.
No, absolutely. He was like, what if somebody said they'd never let go and then let go?
Don't disparage Titanic. I'll
We're
cry
not
right
getting
now.
into this, yeah.
Mom goes into the closet. Tangina goes against the wall and calls the spirits to cross over to the light. Coach pulls on the rope and Tangina says it's too soon, but he gets nervous. And a huge skull like bursts out of the closet. Aggressively large. I don't think it scared me. Did it?
No, I don't have it written down that it did.
Yeah.
So.
Downstairs, Mom and Carol Ann come through the ceiling. So they come through the portal, crashing to the floor, absolutely covered in this disgusting goo.
Yeah, it looks like grape jelly to me.
Yeah, once you told me it looked like grape jelly, like a watered down kind of grape jelly, I was like, okay, I can get on board with this. Because when I was just wondering what the hell it was, I was like, this is really disgusting.
And you know what? Commitment, because like Craig T. Nelson and Jo Beth Williams, they get close. They kiss.
They kiss
with the stuff all over. Good for them.
But he carries them to the tub. So they were like prepared with a tub full of soap and water. Who knew that they would come out covered in goo?
Yeah, I have no idea. I mean, I guess when the tennis balls came out with goo on them, maybe they were like, hey, go run a bath.
I guess.
Okay, so this is like my favorite part of the entire movie because Tangina, she says, this house is clean. And she is fucking dripping with swagger when she says it. She is just the coolest person in the world when she says this. And you know what? She has absolutely earned it. Because if all this just happened and she solved that problem with all of this, she is the coolest person in the world. She deserves that.
So really, though, the person who plays her is really cool. And so I go on IMDb. I have the app. I love IMDb.
She has the app. You just go to the website.
No, for some reason, I go to it a lot. So I really like the app. But the person who plays Tangina has, you know how everyone has a little bio at the top of their thing?
Yeah.
And I don't know who writes that bio. She has the longest one I have ever seen. I considered like maybe reading from some of it, but it's very long. It's like I want to know who wrote it. Like if a grandchild or a child wrote it, it's several paragraphs. And she is a very interesting woman. She started acting late. Jason is looking at it right now on his screen. He just like big eyes looking at it because of how long it is.
Yeah, this is incredible. Also, she's 4'3".
Yeah.
I knew she was short. I didn't know she was that short.
Yeah, she's
That's
the only
impressive.
little person in her family, according to that. It's due to a pituitary gland thing.
She has my birthday. She was born May 28th.
Oh, I didn't even notice.
Wow.
I was too distracted by how many paragraphs are in her IMDb bio. But she's just a very interesting person. You should go ahead and read it and just learn about her. It was great. Anyway, this scene as well is probably one of my favorites in the movie. I definitely absolutely held back tears at this family just like coming back together, and Coach and the mom kiss, and it's just really sweet.
Yeah, I've seen you cry at way less. I was really surprised you held it together here.
And it's just really nice that there's a happy ending, except that we're not really at the end.
Love it. Love it. Okay, this movie gives you a whole climax and then a happy ending and then boom, real climax.
Yeah.
Love this.
The next scene is them moving. They're packing up. They're heading out, which is the correct thing to do. Mom and Dana, the teenager, have this kind of cute conversation outside. It's their last day. They're absolutely leaving this day, but Dana has to go be with her friends because she's a teenager. The mom's like, okay, but we're not sleeping here tonight, so you have to be home. Dad wants to stay at the Holiday Inn on I-76, I think she says. And Dana goes, oh yeah, I remember that place. And the mom goes, what? And instead of answering, she kind of deflects and says, hey, are you going to do something with that? And points to this gray streak that's in her hair. So I feel like I don't know, the sister was, or Dana was like fooling around with boys or something at the hotel.
Yeah, and I love this look. Like, so, like, her paranormal encounter has, like, put this, like, streak of gray hair on the side of Jo Beth Williams' head.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask.
It's a great look. I think it looks fantastic.
Happened.
She looks like a Hogwarts professor.
Yeah, it really suits her. But also, this was just showing us that, like, okay, everything is fine. This family is back to normal. They're going to be okay. And Mom adds that Carol Ann doesn't remember anything. Dad has gone to, or Coach has gone to quit his job, but the boss won't take no for an answer. Again, I just wrote in my notes, I love this family, protect them at all costs. And although they aren't spending the night, Coach has something to do. I didn't really catch what he's doing.
He's still talking to his boss.
Oh.
He's trying to, like, quit, and his boss is basically just, like, won't let the conversation die. So Coach is trying to iron this out with him.
So they are leaving tonight, but they're going to be there late. So that night, Mom runs herself a bath, and while it's filling, she goes and puts the 2 kids to sleep. Okay, you're leaving probably in like 2 hours. Why do the kids even have to attempt to sleep? Why are we putting them in pajamas? How do they still have bedding out? Like, what?
Yeah, and if this is me after this experience, we're not leaving each other's sight until we're, like, gone.
Right.
Like, I am not just tucking these kids in and then going to take a bath. I am sitting huddled in a corner with them, saying and doing nothing until the husband comes to take us away.
Like, I'll wait outside. Mom leaves, the kids are alone, and Robbie just looks at that friggin' clown that is back on the chair. Now, how did they get all their things back? Also, like, how is that chair back? Why is the clown back?
The chair and the clown were still in the closet, remember?
I guess. Robbie throws a jacket to cover it, but he misses. And he kind of is like, whatever, I'll try to sleep. We cut to Mom. She's enjoying herself in the bath. It is a very long scene of her doing nothing. Like, it is just minutes of her sitting in the bath. I thought something was going to come up in the tub and kill her, but nothing happens. Back to the kids, though. There's a rustling sound, and it wakes up Robbie, and he notices that clown is gone.
Briana, oh my God. And then the clown grabs Robbie, and she screams.
Oh, yeah. Well, because he looks on both sides of the bed, and there's nothing there. And when he gets back up, the clown grabs him.
Yeah, its arms, like, wrap around his head.
And is choking him.
Yeah. It's scary, honestly. And it's not even, like, there aren't even bad effects here to save you from it. Like, that's the toy, and it looks scary.
Do you know why it wasn't bad effects?
Why?
Because it was real.
What do you mean?
So they built a mechanical arm for this clown, and it malfunctioned, and it choked that kid.
No.
Yes. It choked him. It wrapped around his neck too tight, and when he called out that he couldn't breathe, Spielberg thought he was...
like ad-libbing?
Ad-libbing, yeah.
That is crazy.
And it wasn't until his face changed color that he realized he wasn't acting.
Oh, my goodness.
And Spielberg, like, saved him.
That is crazy.
Yeah. That's probably another example of stuff going on set.
That's the curse right there. All right. You might have just turned me into a believer.
Credit to Screen Rant for that.
Wow.
Meanwhile, Mom is drying her hair, so she doesn't hear what's going on. When she finishes, she relaxes, and she's just wearing a t-shirt and underwear. Again, you're leaving in like less than 2 hours, but whatever. Now she hears the kids, and so she runs and she gets out of bed, but she gets held back by a force. It lifts her up against the wall. It pulls her across the ceiling and then pulls her down the other side of the room.
Yeah, and this is a really creepy scene too.
Yeah.
Again, like, it's not like there were no effects to be bad. It just looked creepy.
Yeah.
It looked like exactly what happened.
Robbie saves himself and is like beating up the clown. So he's just getting all of his childhood aggression out on that clown. So Mom gets put back down and she's trying to leave, but, you know, she's still battling this force. It won't let her just go. The closet door in the bedroom opens. The light comes out. It shuts, and then stuff is like oozing from the door frame. So this like goo, not the same goo that was on them, like grosser goo.
No, this looked like insulation foam.
Yeah.
Like when you spray it. Maybe that's what they used.
Mom is being kept out of the room by a large ghost covering it. Like, it's like a skeleton, like a long skeleton face, and then these like long arms.
Yeah, and the arms had like double joints, like sort of like a praying mantis. It was actually really well done. Like, this was again, you know, the effects not the best, but it was a creepy looking ghost.
You know what it reminded me of? And a lot of the effects reminded me of?
The Haunted Mansion?
No.
What?
Casper. Especially this ghost against the door. It reminded me of the skinny ghost in Casper. I don't know. All the effects just looked very similar.
I think it's because we just talked about Devon Sawa a few days ago.
No. The mom falls downstairs and she runs outside screaming for help from the neighbors. These neighbors who just haven't been helpful ever. She's now screaming for them. And of course, it's pouring again. She falls into the water/mud pool. That's where the skulls come in. So there's skulls like floating up. A casket rises out and just bodies are falling out. That's scary.
Love it.
That's where I wrote, these are real because they're cheaper
scary.
than making fake ones.
I don't think they're real. I don't think they
That
are.
came from Screen Rant too.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
She can't get out because it's muddy and she can't gain any traction, but the neighbors heard her screaming. So they did come and help her. They got her out. She gets back inside and up the stairs, but the hallway is extended. Was this like an effect or was this something like the ghosts were doing?
I mean, I think that's open for interpretation. Either it felt like that to her or the ghosts were doing it. But either way, she's like, it's like that dream where you're running down a hallway and you don't get anywhere. Yeah. And then she eventually does get there.
She does, yeah.
But it's very dreamlike.
She opens the door and the closet, it looks like a throat. It looks like this big, thick throat. Like the house is alive or something.
Yeah, maybe trying to swallow him whole.
Because of the wind that's happening, the kids are on Carol Ann's bed, which is nearest to the door, and they're holding on for dear life. The mom, she's holding onto the door frame. She's reaching for the kids, and they finally are able to grasp hands and get out of the room.
And this woman is so badass. Like, she was defeated like 7 times, and she would just not give up.
Right.
Love that.
Meanwhile, Coach returns, and he sees the lights going crazy in the house, so he runs to the door. The family opens it. So the mom and the kids have come down the stairs. She opens the door to get out, but they're blocked by a casket that is breaking through the brick walkway. Caskets just continue to pop up everywhere, like in the yard, in the driveway. The boss is watching all of this. So he followed Coach home because he clearly cannot take no for an answer. And Coach sees him and says, "You son of a bitch, you moved the cemetery, but not the bodies."
Headstones. You move the headstones, but not the bodies.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's awful.
Iconic.
The family comes out from the backyard. They pile into the car. Bodies continue popping up everywhere. And they're all screaming at him to hurry up.
Yeah, he's got the keys in his hand. He's trying to find the right key. And they're just all screaming, get the key, start the car. And I'm just, if I'm him, I literally would turn around and be like, shut up, give me a second to find the right key. This is a high stress situation. I get that they're stressed out, but so is he. And you got to let him get that key.
Well, and finally Dana comes home. And she's just immediately screaming and crying, are we doing this again? Are you kidding me?
Yeah, and it was actually a weird edit there because, she has, trouble getting into the car, and you never actually see her get into the car. But
really?
Yeah, but she does get in the car.
She gets in, and they drive off. And all the neighbors are kind of out now watching this. The boss is still watching this. A spark comes out of the house and hits the boss, in the head.
Good.
It basically, does it implode on itself, or does it get sucked up into the realm like a cloud?
I mean, yes.
It was kind of hard
both.
to see, I guess.
It definitely implodes on itself, but I also think that it kind of got transported to the other dimension is where it went.
And all that's left is just the plot of land.
And all those caskets.
Right.
Yeah.
They reach the hotel. They're exhausted and traumatized, and they look it. It's a Holiday Inn, and I didn't really register this until they were there, but it's like a motel, which, Holiday Inns don't look like that anymore.
Hotel, motel, Holiday Inn.
They go in, and we're only seeing it from the outside. So they all go into the room. They close the door. And then the camera lingers, and the door opens, and the dad wheels the TV out into the walkway and then closes the door. That's the end. And they've now become a no TV family.
Beautiful ending. Love that ending. Nice touch of levity right at the end.
Yeah.
The ending, very roller coastery. I don't mean to denigrate Poltergeist by comparing it to a much, much lesser movie, but it kind of reminded me of The Grudge that we just watched a couple weeks ago in that, it picked up so fast. It wasn't slow to start with, but once it started going, it just piled on and snowballed so fast that it was just almost hard to keep up with sometimes. And I loved it.
Yeah. This was a very good movie, and I absolutely loved it and have no regrets watching it.
That's great.
So speaking of what we think of it, let's talk about what someone else thought of it. And once again, my review is from Roger Ebert. If you're getting sick of hearing from him, I'll try to find somebody else. But when I Google for reviews, his just come right up. It makes it so easy. What he had to say was not much, but it's all very good. He gave it 3 stars, so he really liked it. I just learned the other day that his stars are out of 4. I, for some reason, assumed it was out of 5 because I feel like everything is a 5-star scale these days. But he starts off saying special effects in movies have grown so skilled, sensational, and scary that they sometimes upstage the human actors, and they often cost a lot more. In Poltergeist, for example, the cast is made up of relatively unknown performers, but that's all right because the real stars are producer Steven Spielberg, director Tobe Hooper, and their reputations for special effects and realistic violence. Their names on this horror film suggest that its technology will be impeccable, and they don't disappoint us. This is the movie the Amityville Horror dreamed of being. So some shade thrown at Amityville Horror.
Yeah, wow.
But also, I just found it so interesting that he started off talking about the effects and seeing it now with fresh eyes or for the first time. The effects obviously haven't carried through, but they clearly were innovative at the time.
Yeah, I think, every time we talked about them here, we said, I'm sure they were great at the time, and
Yeah.
this confirms that they were. But they definitely just don't hold up well today.
He says, but Poltergeist is an effective thriller, not so much because of the special effects as because Hooper and Spielberg have tried to see the movie's strange events through the eyes of the family members instead of just standing back and letting the special effects overwhelm the cast along with the audience. The opening visuals, however, are somewhat ominous. They're an extreme close-up of a TV screen filled with the usual patriotic images, Iwo Jima, the Lincoln Memorial. Why so close? We're almost being invited to look between the dots on the screen and see something else. So first I thought it was funny that he said, why so close? Because I too was like, why the hell is this so up close? But I like his idea that it's like, look between the lines, basically. And the villains are the same people who were the bad guys in Spielberg's Jaws, the real estate developers. This time, instead of encouraging people to go back into the water, they're building a subdivision on top of an old graveyard. And I wanted to point that out because I feel like both of us were very much against this real estate development thing. And we both don't like subdivisions that have all the same houses and the idea of like an HOA, which is not typical in New England as it is everywhere else. But apparently that's a trend for Spielberg, is to focus on suburbia and specifically not like real estate developers, I guess.
All right. Was the bad guy in E.T. a real estate developer as well?
I've never seen E.T.
What?
I know. I don't know. He finishes it off saying, nobody ever does decide whether a poltergeist really is involved in the events in the house or who the poltergeist may be. But if that doesn't prevent them from naming the movie Poltergeist, I guess it shouldn't keep us from enjoying it.
That's a little smug for my taste, but
yeah. He always has a tone of smudgeness, as
there's
Michael
the
Scott would
smudgeness,
say.
yeah. But yeah, I mean, he's right. This is a classic for a reason.
Let's give it our scores. What was your jump score?
My jump score was a 7.
Wow.
Yeah, but it's above average only because of quality, not quantity. There weren't a ton of jump scares. There weren't even a ton of, I would say, intentional jump scares. But I think the fact that 2 of the 3 biggest screams you've given while we've done this podcast were while we watched this movie.
Yeah.
So I feel like even though I don't necessarily think it's a very jump scary movie, the evidence says otherwise. So it's a 7 for me. Okay.
You ranked that very high. And I too was thinking that I had some good jump scares, but I think when I was scoring it, I thought I kind of included the overall scariness of it, I guess, because I only gave it a 3 for the jump scare.
That's fair. I just, like I said, it was a matter of quality, not quantity.
Yeah,
Those were 2 great jump scares.
Good, yeah.
So for the Nightlight score, why don't you go first? I'm very curious what yours is here.
Originally, I gave it a 0, but I changed it to 1. What?
That is, all right.
It's not. It's because it's old. It doesn't scare me. And also because I was very much more focused on the family. I wrote this. I said it had scary elements, but it didn't feel like a scary movie. It really felt like we were watching, I said, like a grown-up Casper, because I felt like it was, sad about the spirits not being able to move on and that whole side of it, but really just emotional and focused on this family and getting this family back together.
The more of these movies we watch together and the more I hear your, analysis of their scariness, the more I think you just like scary movies and you don't know that you like scary movies. I feel like you've avoided them because you've built them up in your head, but every single one we've watched, I feel like you've enjoyed and nothing has really lingered with you. And we've definitely watched some movies that gave a lot of people nightmares.
No, it's not true that it hasn't lingered with me. That's why I raised it to a 1, because so we watched this last night. The thing for me is we can be watching this and it can be daytime, or maybe we're watching it with the lights off, which we did watch it with the lights off. But once it becomes time to go to bed, that's when all of these things get real for me. And so I said, all right, you know what? I feel a little unsettled. I'm going to bump it up to a 1.
Okay. I mean, I gave it a 7.
What?
Yeah, there is so much nightmare. We talked about this. Like, again, I mean, maybe it's because as a child, I did literally have nightmares from this movie.
Maybe,
so
yeah.
The clown is so creepy. That clown is pure nightmare fuel. That clown exists for no other reason than to stay in your mind after you leave the movie theater.
No, see, because for someone who's not afraid of clowns, that's only scary in the moment. A murderous clown, like
Fair enough.
American Horror Story is
All
another
right.
story.
Well, what about the maggots in the food?
That's just gross.
Yeah, it's gross. And you're not going to think about that the next time you have a steak or a chicken leg?
Maybe, but I'm not scared of it.
All right. The chair stuff was really cool, too. I feel like that's creepy. If you walked into our kitchen and all the chairs were stacked on the table, that's just a creepy thing. So I give it a 7. This is a movie that, again, maybe it's because you're seeing it as well, I won't say your age, but you're seeing it your age, and I saw it at the age I saw it at, and it actually gave me nightmares. So I guess that's where that is. All right, so what is your Scaredy Cat score?
We'll do your horror buff score first.
I've got a 9 out of 10. Love this movie. It's just about perfect for me. Far be it from me to criticize it. I am not on the level of smudge as Roger Ebert. If I have to nitpick a little bit, the dated effects don't help. That's not really the movie's fault, but I can only judge it for today.
Yeah.
And also just a couple character decisions that I felt didn't really seem to fit the type of character I felt was being built up to that point. Really just everything after that first fake out climax, I really felt was kind of out of character for the mom and dad up to this point in the movie. And not to the point that it lowered my enjoyment of it, but just that's a little bit of a criticism for me. Yeah.
Okay, so my Scaredy Cat score, I gave it a 2. Because it gave me moments of scary, but overall, it's not scary to me.
So I think we might have to rework our scoring system or something to give you just also a quality score. Because I feel like if we go back and we listen to every single episode, I don't think you've given any single category higher than a 3 at any point. And I feel like that's
well, because our ratings are different.
No, I know.
I'm not rating the quality of the film whatsoever.
I understand
If I
that.
was, it would be a 9 or a 10 because I loved this movie.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Maybe do both. That's all I'm saying. Maybe do both.
Just the whole concept is how afraid of it I am.
Yeah, well, I'm pretty sure I made it clear that I don't understand the concept of this podcast. So.
All right. Any final thoughts on the film?
No, I mean, if you listen to this whole thing and haven't watched it yet, shame on you. Go watch it right now. It's on HBO Max. And do not accidentally watch the remake because it was terrible.
All right. Our next movie is Blair Witch Project.
Blair Witch. So Briana is really nervous about this. After Poltergeist ended, we don't talk about the movie much between watching and recording because we want this to be, a genuine conversation. But obviously we live together. We talk about it a little bit. And right after Poltergeist ended, I could tell it did not scare Briana in the slightest. And I said, hey, we really do have to watch Sinister soon or something. But she's adamant that she thinks Blair Witch is going to scare her. And she agreed that if after we watch Blair Witch, it's not scary, we will be switching up our order and watching Sinister faster to try and scare the pants off of her. So either way, next week or the week after, you are getting a Scaredy Pants Briana, and I cannot wait for it.
I'm truly so afraid. All right, but that is it for Poltergeist. Thank you for listening, and don't forget to follow us on all of our social medias. We are on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. And follow or subscribe to our podcast on your favorite pod platform.
I'm also looking into making a Pinterest for us.
Really?
No.
Oh. Okay, well, Pinterest is coming back according to Jessica St. Clair if you listen to the Deep Dive podcast, which I recommend everybody listen to that. I don't need to promote.
No, don't
June
listen
Diane
to another
Raphael
No. If you want to listen to
really
another
good pod.
podcast, listen to our podcast again.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you.
And share it with your friends.
Yes.
Okay.